The sound of mocking laughter echoed through the lake's edge, the cold air biting into Wine's skin as she stood trembling, surrounded by her bullies. Mina, the ringleader, stood with her arms crossed, her lips curled into a smirk. Mina, looks like you're out of things to cry over, so we gave you a reason. Wine had always been the subject of bullying due to her high marks and low self esteem. They hated her because they couldn't win from her, but she was too weak to go against them. Once she threw a fight and ended up beating half to death. After that, she never had the courage to do anything, especially when she didn't have a mother and her father was always out of country for business. Mina held the small golden ring between her fingers. Wine, that's mine. Please give it back. Mina, this? It's nothing but a cheap metal. What's the big deal? Wine. Belongs to my mother's. She's gone. Please, I'll do anything. Just give it back. Mina, oh, anything? Did you hear that, girls? Alright, like my shoes. She smirked and her friends instantly took out their phones, pressing the record button. Wine froze. There was no way she was going to do it. Her body was trembling due to the sheer cold, and her anxiety, the ring, she needed it back at all costs. The fear had started to take over her, and she felt like she was going to get a panic attack. Mina, no? Time's up, she said, tossing it in the icy lake. Wine screamed, rushing forward as the girls erupted in laughter. Her knees hit the frozen ground near the water's edge, her hands trembling as she stared at the rippling surface. Wine, what did you do? What have I done to you? She screamed out with red, teary eyes. Mina smirked and grabbed her jaw. Mina, maybe next time you'll think twice before acting all high and mighty. Good luck finding it, Mama's little girl. She laughed and left with the rest of her friends. Wine remained frozen, her sobs breaking through the stillness of the night. That ring was the last piece of her mother she had. A memory of the woman who had loved her with everything she had. A memory held by a child who was not alone in this world. No matter how much Wine cried and desperately tried to look for the ring, it didn't work. Until her arms gave out due to numbness, she searched and finally, after hours, with a heavy broken heart, she went back. Without realizing, a figure hiding in the shadows had seen it all. A man who was the result of her countless prayers sent to save her from the misery. Jungkook entered the lake. He knew everything. He was not an idiot, but the look inside of the lake it was clear the ring was gone. Only a miracle could bring it back, and that was what he was going to do. Force a miracle to happen. The water was cold enough to eat you alive, icy, painful, the kind which skins you alive. He could feel it all, feel it piercing through his skin, making his blood freeze and his lumps numb, unable to move. But he didn't stop. Even if his heart rate got low, he was determined. Finally, just as the light of the dawn began to break, he stood there with the golden ring shining in between his fingers. It was a pretty ring. Take it. Things you make me do. Wine didn't come to school that day. Jungkook waited, yet realized she needed her time. In the meanwhile, he came across Mina and her group. The same bullies laughing like they didn't make Wine go through such pain. Mina. Oh, Jungkook Oppa. How come you're here? She smiled widely. Jungkook was 1 year senior from them. A crush of almost every girl in the school. The lake was just behind their school, so appearing there was no big deal for the students. JK came to see you. Mina almost screamed out of happiness. Jungkook stepped towards them, held his hand out. Mina took it happily, giving out those shy expressions. Her friends were cheering for her. It was a cheesy scene to any eye until he gripped her wrist and threw her in the same lake instead. It didn't stop at her. Rest of her friends met the same fate. They could hardly breathe due to the sheer cold. The water was surely freezing even under the sunlight. Mina screamed and immediately tried to swim towards the surface. Jungkook crouched down and tilted his head, his eyes full with rage. He hoped. He hoped he could talk with his fists. He hoped he was facing a man so he could take his anger out. JK, none of you gets out of here alive. Until the dawn breaks tomorrow. Try and you'll see my wrath. They screamed out in anger, tried to get out only to be pushed back. They cried, begged for mercy, and kept crying. Jungkook could see their bodies turning colors, blue, purplish due to their blood freezing. Slowly, all of them stopped fighting as hours passed by. They were shivering continuously, their eyes losing their life. Jungkook wouldn't let them die, but he was going to leave them in the death's mouth, surely. Unfortunately, he had to let them go in the middle of the night, since staying anymore might actually kill them at this state. Zeke, mess with wine again, and you won't get out of this alive, was all he said before he left them there. Jungkook went straight to the dorm right beside the school's building. That's where he lived, and so did Ryan. She sat in front of a window in the middle of the night, unable to sleep. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned, startled, as Jungkook stepped inside. He was quiet. She didn't know why he was here, but somehow his presence gave her warmth. And then he extended his hand. Her eyes widened as she saw what he was holding, the ring, her mother's ring. Take it. Fond for you. Mine cried, clearly in disbelief. Maybe it was a dream because how come a person she least expected to do this for her? Jungkook held her hand and slipped the ring in her finger. Take it. Don't lose it again. He said and Wine jumped in his arms. It was the warmth she found after all the loneliness and cruelty she faced all these years. Wine, I'm sorry. I pushed you away all the time. Wine had declared once that he was her enemy. It was to fool the girls that she had nothing to do with Jungkook once they accidentally bumped into each other. She didn't want them hitting on her due to their stupidness. This was the first time she bumped into Jungkook. That night they came across again and he apologized to her, but she cleared it to him immediately that she didn't mean any of that. However, Jungkook told her he could protect her. She didn't have to avoid him for some random girls. Wine didn't accept. She didn't want to bother him for something like that. However, under the shadows, in the lonely streets and the silence of the night, they always met, talked about their days, and became each other's warmth in the middle of their stressful lives. Jungkook, then don't anymore. I've given you enough time. Let me protect you now. Openly. Wine. Jungkook, you have a life. You don't have to go through such trouble. Take it. Trouble? Wine. When are you going to understand your behavior is what troubles me? He pulled her back and held her shoulders, forcing an eye contact. Jake, when will you understand? I've been waiting for you all this time. For you to understand my feelings, to accept me, to let me become yours, to let me protect you. Mine gulped. Was this really a dream? How come the man she thought she could never have be confessing to her? Her eyes teared up again as she got on her feet and kissed him. He has been really her only anchor in this painful void. He was the only warmth she needed. He kissed her back. His hands gripped her. Like his whole life, he has been waiting for this moment. Finally, he didn't have to hide in the shadows and watch her get wrecked. All that pain of watching from afar was coming to an end. In that moment, he was a man who caught what his heart desired and sworn to protect.